Let me tell you something about humans that the Galactic Council never bothered to mention in their 14,000-page threat assessment document. They are absolutely, categorically, magnificently insane. I know this because I watched one of them tell our Supreme War Alpha to go reproduce with himself in considerably more colorful terms, while he had her suspended 3 meters off the ground with a gravity lock. My name is Vex Thar, and before that particular Tuesday went sideways, I was a decorated intelligence officer in the Kryn Dominion military. Decorated. Past tense. Turns out, watching your commanding officer get verbally eviscerated by a barely contained ball of human fury, and then doing nothing about it, is frowned upon in our chain of command. Who knew? But I am getting ahead of myself. It started 6 solar cycles ago when our fleet intercepted a human scouting vessel near the outer reaches. The ship was small, ugly, and held together with what appeared to be optimism and spite. Standard human engineering, really. Our scans showed one life form aboard. One. Supreme War Alpha Krath. Nor, bless his overinflated ego, decided this would be an excellent opportunity to demonstrate Kryn's superiority. He ordered the ship disabled, and the occupant brought aboard our flagship for what he called an educational experience. The human was female, approximately 1.7 meters tall, with hair the color of burnt copper and eyes like chips of glacial ice. She wore a flight suit that had seen better decades and carried herself with the kind of casual confidence that should have been our first warning sign. Krath Nor stood before her in the detention bay, all 2.8 meters of genetically engineered predator. His scales gleamed like polished obsidian, his fangs could punch through starship hull plating, and his claws had personally ended 43 enemy commanders in single combat. He was, by any objective measure, terrifying. The human looked bored. "I am Supreme War Alpha Krath Nor," he announced, his voice reverberating through the bay with enough bass to rattle deck plates. "Commander of the Kryn Third Fleet. Conqueror of 17 star systems. You will address me with appropriate deference." The human tilted her head, studying him like he was a particularly unimpressive museum exhibit. "Cool story, big guy. I'm Captain Mira Thorne, commander of one beat-up scout ship, conqueror of approximately 0 star systems. You can call me seriously annoyed." I saw several of my fellow officers stiffen. You did not speak to Krath Nor like that. You certainly did not mock him. Species far more powerful than humans had learned that lesson the hard way. Krath Nor's eyes narrowed to slits. "You dare." "I dare a lot of things," Mira said, examining her fingernails with theatrical disinterest. "Last week I dared to eat gas station sushi. Compared to that, sassing a giant lizard with anger management issues barely registers on my personal risk meter." "Oh no." Krath Nor activated the gravity lock. Mira rose smoothly off her feet, suspended in the air, her arms forced to her sides by invisible pressure. It was a show of dominance we used on uncooperative prisoners. Most species began begging within minutes. Mira yawned. "Kneel," Krath Nor commanded, releasing just enough pressure for her to move. "Kneel before your superior, human, and I may yet show mercy." That was when she laughed. Not a nervous titter, not a desperate giggle. A full, genuine, absolutely delighted laugh that echoed through the detention bay like artillery fire. "Oh, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with condescension that would have made a seasoned diplomat weep with envy. "I only kneel for 2 reasons. Prayer and planting bodies. And I am not feeling particularly spiritual right now." The temperature in the room dropped approximately 10 degrees. Krath Nor's scales began shifting through color spectrums that indicated lethal levels of rage. His claws extended, his pupils dilated. "You will learn your place, inferior creature." "Inferior?" Mira's grin could have cut durasteel. Let me explain something to you, Krath. Can I call you Krath? I feel like we are bonding here. Your species fought for what? A century to conquer those 17 systems you are so proud of? 78 years of glorious combat, Krath said, his voice tight. Right. 78 years. Humanity conquered 62 systems in 12 years. Then we got bored and decided to focus on making better coffee instead. We have our priorities straight. I checked her statement later. It was accurate. Horrifyingly accurate. Krath's restraint, such as it was, evaporated. He lunged forward, claws extended, moving with the speed that had made him legendary. He covered 3 meters in less than a second. Mira did not flinch. The Supreme War Alpha stopped millimeters from her face, breathing hard, every muscle tensed for violence. Mira asked conversationally, "Because from where I am floating, and yes, gravity locks are super uncomfortable, by the way, terrible design, no lumbar support whatsoever. From where I am floating, it looks like you brought your entire flagship to capture one unarmed scout. That is either tactical genius or catastrophic overcompensation. I am leaning toward the latter. I will give Krath this much credit. He did not kill her. I am still not sure why. Instead, he increased the gravity lock pressure until I could hear Mira's ribs creaking, until breathing should have become impossible, until most species would have lost consciousness." Mira's grin never wavered. "That all you got, big boy?" Krath released her. She dropped to the deck, landing in a crouch that looked almost casual. No stumbling, no gasping for air. She straightened, rolled her shoulders, and cracked her neck with a sound that made everyone in the bay wince. "Well," she said brightly. "That was invigorating. What else you got on the agenda? Thumbscrews? Waterboarding? Strongly worded disapproval?" "You will be returned to your cell," Krath said coldly. "We will speak again when you have learned proper respect." "Looking forward to it," Mira called over her shoulder as the guards escorted her out. "Maybe next time, bring snacks. I am thinking cheese cubes. Those little ones with the toothpicks." The detention bay remained silent for a full 30 seconds after she left. Finally, Sub-Commander Jex spoke up. "Sir, with respect, perhaps we should simply execute the prisoner and avoid further complications." Krath rounded on him with enough fury that Jexrin actually took a step back. That creature just challenged the authority of a Supreme War Alpha. She will submit, publicly, or she will serve as an example of what happens to those who defy Kryn's superiority. I kept my mouth shut. I had seen what happened to officers who questioned Krath judgment. Spoiler alert, it involved airlocks and vacuum exposure. But I also knew something Krath did not. I had actually read those 14,000 pages of human threat assessment. All of them, even the appendices, especially the appendices. Humans did not break easily. They did not bend. When you pushed them, they pushed back harder. When you threatened them, they escalated. When you tried to dominate them, they burned your civilization to the ground and then made sarcastic comments about the ashes. The Galactic Council had not banned humans from setting foot in Council space because they were weak. They had done it because humans were dangerous in ways most species could not comprehend, and Captain Mira Thorne, with her inappropriate jokes and complete absence of survival instinct, was about to demonstrate exactly why. 3 cycles later, Krath summoned her again, this time to the observation deck, where the entire senior command staff had assembled. He wanted witnesses for whatever demonstration he had planned. Mira arrived, escorted by 6 guards, each of whom looked distinctly uncomfortable. She had apparently spent her confinement teaching them Earth card games and was up by what she called 37 million space bucks. "Your marker is good, right, Draxor?" she asked one of the guards. "Because I am planning to use my winnings to buy a yacht." Draxor, a veteran shock trooper who had personally suppressed 12 planetary rebellions, looked sheepish. "Yes, Captain Thorne. Outstanding. Love doing business with honorable folks." Crathnor stood at the center of the deck, backlit by the viewing port that showed the infinite darkness of space. Very dramatic. He had clearly spent time staging this. "Captain Thorne," he began, his voice formal, "you stand accused of disrespecting a Supreme War Alpha, of refusing lawful commands, of displaying unacceptable arrogance in the face of superior force. How do you plead?" Mira pretended to consider this seriously. "Guilty on all counts. Also guilty of beating Draxor at poker 17 games in a row, but that was just embarrassing for everyone involved. We agreed not to mention it." Draxor's scales flushed, a color indicating deep embarrassment. "Your attempt at humor will not save you," Crathnor said. "I offer you one final opportunity. Kneel. Acknowledge Kryn's superiority. Beg for mercy. Do this, and you may yet survive this encounter." Mira looked around the observation deck, taking in the assembled officers, the guards, the careful staging of this entire production. Then she looked back at Crathnor and smiled. It was not a nice smile. "You want me to kneel?" she asked softly. "You want me to grovel? To prostrate myself before your glorious scaled magnificence?" "Yes." Crathnor's voice rang with triumph. "Here is the thing about humans," Mira said, her voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. "We have this saying, back home, 'Give me liberty or give me death.' You know what that means? Empty words. It means we would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. It means you can kill us, sure. You are bigger, stronger, probably better armed, but you cannot make us submit, cannot make us bow, cannot make us acknowledge your supremacy, because supremacy is not about physical power. It is about will. And human will?" She laughed again, sharp and bright. "Human will is the only thing in this universe more stubborn than our cooking." Crathnor's tail lashed, cracking against the deck with a sound like a gunshot. Bold words for someone completely at my mercy. "At your mercy?" Mira raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you think this is?" "Let me tell you what I see. I see a supposedly supreme commander who is so threatened by one unarmed scout pilot that he has to stage an entire dramatic confrontation with his whole command staff watching. I see someone who needs an audience to validate his authority. That is not strength, Krath. That is insecurity. With really good lighting." Several officers gasped. I closed my eyes. This was going to end badly. Crathnor's control finally shattered. He moved faster than I had ever seen him move, crossing the deck in a blur, claws extended, fangs bared, every instinct screaming for blood. Mira stood her ground. At the last possible second, Crathnor stopped. Again. His claws rested against Mira's throat, sharp enough to draw blood with the slightest pressure. His breathing was ragged. His eyes burned with barely contained violence. "Give me one reason," he hissed. "One reason I should not end your miserable existence right now." Mira looked up at him calmly, despite the fact that death was literally pressed against her jugular. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried through the entire deck. "Because if you kill me, I win. I will have died, proving that the mighty Supreme War Alpha could not break a single human, could not make her submit, could not make her acknowledge his power. And every officer in this room will know it. Every being in your fleet will eventually hear about it. You will have confirmed exactly what I have been saying, that your authority is fragile, that your strength is hollow, that underneath all those scales and titles, you are just afraid." The observation deck was so silent I could hear my own circulatory system, Crathnor stared at her. Mira stared back. And then, incredibly, unbelievably, Crathnor lowered his claws. He stepped back. He turned to the assembled officers, his voice rough. "Return the prisoner to her cell. Double the guard. No one speaks to her without my explicit permission." As the guards moved to escort Mira away, she caught my eye. Winked. Actually, winked. "See you around, Vexthar," she called out cheerfully. "Hope you enjoyed the show." How did she know my name? I had never spoken to her. Never even been close enough for her to read my rank insignia. The guards led her away, and Crathnor dismissed the command staff with barely controlled fury. I lingered, trying to process what I had just witnessed. Vexthar. Crathnor's voice stopped me at the door. A word. I approached cautiously. When a Supreme War Alpha wanted a word, it rarely ended well for the word recipient. "Sir? You read the human assessment files. All of them." It was not a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, sir." "Tell me truthfully, can they be broken?" I thought about the 14,000 pages, about the species descriptions, about the historical records of human conflicts, human resilience, human absolute refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat was the only logical option. "No, sir," I said quietly. "I do not believe they can." Crathnor was silent for a long moment, staring out at the stars. "Then what do we do with Captain Thorne?" That was an excellent question. One I suspected was about to become very, very relevant, because in the holding cells 3 decks below, Captain Mira Thorne was about to demonstrate why humans had earned their reputation as the universe's most entertainingly unpredictable species. And Crathnor's day was about to get considerably worse. 3 cycles after the observation deck incident, everything went to hell in a handbasket. That is a human expression I learned later. It perfectly describes what happened next. I was running diagnostic protocols in the intelligence bay when the alarms started screaming. Not the regular intruder alert, not the system malfunction warning, the full scale, all hands to battle stations, we are about to die, horribly, kind of alarm that makes your scales stand on end. "Vexthar, report to command immediately," Sub-Commander Jexrin barked through my comm unit. His voice had that distinctive tremor that meant something had gone spectacularly wrong. I sprinted through the corridors, dodging crew members scrambling to their stations. The command deck was pure controlled chaos when I arrived. Officers shouting coordinates, tactical displays flashing red, and in the center of it all, Crathnor stood frozen, staring at the main view screen with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Terror. "What happened?" I asked, sliding into my station. "The human escaped," Jexrin said flatly. "Escaped? How?" We doubled the guard. Triple encrypted the containment field. That cell could hold a fully armed battle mech. Yes, could. Past tense. Jexrin pulled up security footage on my display. "Watch." The footage showed Mira sitting cross-legged in her cell, apparently meditating or sleeping. The 2 guards outside looked alert and professional. Everything seemed normal. Then, Mira opened her eyes and smiled at the camera. She held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. The containment field exploded. Not deactivated, not bypassed. In a shower of sparks that sent both guards diving for cover, Mira strolled out of her cell like she was leaving a hotel room after a pleasant stay. She paused to pat one of the recovering guards on the shoulder. "Thanks for the card games, boys. Really made the stay memorable. Tell Draxor I will collect my winnings later." Then she walked directly toward the nearest access panel, pulled it open with her bare hands, which should have been impossible given the reinforced construction, and disappeared into the maintenance tunnels. That was 40 minutes ago, Jexrin said. We have lost her in the tunnel system. Lost her? The tunnels have sensors every 20 meters. Had sensors. She disabled them. All of them. Every single monitoring device in sections 12 through 37. Gone. And before you ask, yes, we tried flooding those sections with sedative gas. She vented it into space. We tried sealing the blast doors. She overrode them. We tried cutting power to the entire grid. She somehow rerouted auxiliary power and kept going. I pulled up the ship schematics, tracking her possible routes. Where is she heading? That is the terrifying part. Krath Nor spoke for the first time, his voice hollow. Engineering. She is heading directly toward our primary reactor core. My blood went cold. If she destabilizes the reactor, the entire flagship vaporizes, along with the 3 escort cruisers currently in close formation. Approximately 17,000 crew members dead in an instant. Sir, we need to evacuate the engineering section, lock down the core, send every security team we have. Already done. Krath Nor turned to face me. And I saw something I never expected to see in a Supreme War Alpha. Uncertainty. She knew, Vexthar. She knew exactly which security feeds to disable, exactly which routes to take to avoid our search teams, exactly how our systems work. How? I thought about Mira teaching the guards card games, making jokes, asking innocent questions about ship operations, building rapport, gathering intelligence. She was never really a prisoner, I said slowly. She was studying us. Then we are dealing with a trained operative, not a simple scout pilot. Sir, if I may, I think you are missing the larger point. If she wanted to destroy the ship, she would have done it already. She has had access to critical systems for nearly an hour, but she has not triggered any catastrophic failures. She is not trying to kill us. Then what is she doing? My console beeped. A new message appeared, routed through the ship-wide communication system. Text only. The sender ID read, "Your friendly neighborhood human." I read it aloud. To the crew of this lovely vessel, this is Captain Thorne speaking. I have taken temporary control of your engineering section, your life support systems, your navigation, and your really impressive collection of exotic beverages in the officer's lounge. Seriously, that Centauri whiskey is outstanding. Compliments to whoever stocks the bar. Now, I would like to have a conversation with Supreme War Alpha Krath Nor. Not in a detention cell. Not at claw point. A real conversation. Between rational adults, I will be waiting in conference room 7. Bring snacks. I am starving. You have 30 minutes. The clock is ticking. Cheers, Mira. Silence blanketed the command deck. Then Tactical Officer Rendar spoke up timidly. Sir, Conference Room 7 is right next to the Forward Observation Lounge. It has emergency escape pods. If this is a trap. It is not a trap, I heard myself saying. Everyone turned to look at me. If Captain Thorne wanted us dead, we would be dead. She wants to talk. I recommend we listen. Krath Nor's jaw clenched. His claws flexed. Every instinct he possessed was probably screaming at him to storm the conference room with overwhelming force, to reassert dominance, to crush this impertinent human who dared to challenge his authority. But he was not stupid. Arrogant, yes. Prideful, certainly, but not stupid. Jexrin, you have command. Vexthar, with me, we are going to have this conversation. We took 3 guards, not 6, not a full tactical squad. 3. It was almost respectful. Krath Nor was learning. Conference Room 7 was a small, utilitarian space, normally used for diplomatic meetings with minor delegations. When we entered, Mira was sitting at the head of the table, her feet propped up, eating what appeared to be military ration bars with evident enjoyment. "These are terrible," she said cheerfully. "I love them. Very nostalgic. Reminds me of basic training." She gestured to the empty chairs. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Krathno remained standing. "You hijacked my ship, borrowed several key systems temporarily. Hijacking sounds so dramatic. I prefer to think of it as aggressive negotiation." She took another bite of ration bar. "You know what your problem is, Krath? You think power is about who has the biggest ship, the sharpest claws, the most impressive title. But real power is about information, about understanding your opponent, about knowing which buttons to push." "You could have escaped," I said, unable to help myself. "You demonstrated complete access to our systems. You could have stolen a shuttle and been gone before we even knew what happened." Mira looked at me directly for the first time. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. "True, but then I would have learned nothing useful. And you would have learned nothing important. Seemed wasteful. What could you possibly want to learn from us?" Krathno demanded. "Whether you are actually as dangerous as you pretend to be, whether the Kryn Dominion is a legitimate threat to human space, or just exceptionally good at marketing." She finished the ration bar and brushed crumbs off her flight suit. "Verdict is still out, honestly. You have impressive technology, good tactical training, decent strategic thinking. But you are fundamentally handicapped by your obsession with dominance displays." "Handicapped?" Krathnor's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "Handicapped. You spend so much energy proving you are superior that you miss obvious tactical opportunities. Take my capture, for example. You had a human scout pilot, alone, completely at your mercy. You could have questioned me about fleet movements, trade routes, defensive capabilities. Instead, you tried to make me kneel, because your ego mattered more than intelligence gathering. That is not strength. That is weakness, pretending to be strength." I asked. "You have made your point. You have demonstrated human capabilities. What are your terms for releasing our systems?" Mira smiled. "My terms are simple. Let me go. Give me back my ship, which I notice you have been examining with great interest. And in exchange, I deliver a message to human command that the Kryn Dominion, while aggressive and occasionally ridiculous, is not an immediate threat requiring military response. Everyone goes home happy. No war, no casualties, no intergalactic incidents. You think your species would go to war over one pilot?" Krathner asked skeptically. "Oh, absolutely not. Humans do not go to war over one pilot. We go to war over principles, over insults to our dignity, over someone, somewhere, deciding that humans should kneel." Her expression hardened. "You grabbed one of ours. You threatened her. You tried to break her spirit. Humanity takes that personally, very personally. Right now, you are dealing with Captain Mira Thorne, semi-professional troublemaker. But if you kill me, if you hurt me, if you continue playing your dominance games, you will be dealing with the full weight of human military response. And trust me when I say, you do not want that. Human forces are scattered across 62 systems," Krathno said, "stretched thin, poorly coordinated. Our intelligence suggests they could barely mount a defensive action, let alone an offensive campaign." Mira laughed. "Your intelligence is terrible. Humans are scattered because we are everywhere. We are poorly coordinated because we do not need orders to know what to do when one of ours gets hurt. We act. Every independent colony, every merchant ship, every desperate fool in a beat-up scout vessel looking for adventure. You think you are facing a military force. You would actually be facing a culture, and you cannot bomb culture into submission. We tried that on ourselves for centuries. Did not work. I believed her. Every word. The human assessment files had said as much. buried in Appendix 47, subsection 93. Humans were dangerous not because of their technology or their tactics, but because of their fundamental refusal to accept defeat. Crathnor was silent for a long time. I could see the calculations running behind his eyes. Pride versus pragmatism, ego versus survival. Finally, he spoke. If I release you, how do I know you will not simply report our position to human command? That you will not return with reinforcements? You do not know, Mira said simply. You have to trust me. Which, given our recent history, is asking a lot. So, here is what I propose. I leave. I report to my command that I encountered a Kryn patrol, was briefly detained, and released without incident after civilized negotiations. I recommend maintaining current borders and avoiding unnecessary provocations. You, in turn, do not attack any more human scouts. You do not push into human territory. You focus your impressive military might on literally anything else. Boring. And, if I refuse? Crathnor asked. If I decide your threat is empty? Mira stood up slowly. Despite being significantly smaller than Crathnor, she somehow dominated the room. Then you will learn what happens when humanity stops being sarcastic and starts being serious. And trust me, you will not enjoy the lesson. The standoff lasted exactly 17 seconds. I counted. Then Crathnor nodded once. Your ship will be prepared for departure. You have 1 hour. Generous. I accept. Mira extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Crathnor stared at it like it might explode. Oh, come on. It is called a handshake. You grip hands. It symbolizes trust. Very low tech. Even your species must have something similar. Slowly, carefully, Crathnor reached out and grasped Mira's hand. She shook it once, firmly, then released. Pleasure doing business with you, Krath. Work on that anger management thing. It will save you trouble down the line. She turned to me. Vexithar, you are smart enough to see what is actually happening here. Use that intelligence. Your people might need it someday. Then she was gone, escorted by guards who looked distinctly relieved to see her leaving. I found myself alone with Crathnor in the conference room. That was well handled, sir, I said carefully. Was it? Crathnor slumped into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. I just let a prisoner escape after she hijacked my flagship, humiliated my command staff, and dictated terms to a Supreme War Alpha. The Council will have my scales for this. The Council will never know the full details. We report that we detained a human scout, conducted standard interrogation procedures, determined she had no valuable intelligence, and released her in accordance with interstellar law. Clean. Simple. Boring. As Captain Thorne suggested. You want me to lie to the Council? I want you to survive long enough to benefit from what we learned today. Humans are not like other species. They cannot be dominated, cannot be threatened into submission, cannot be broken by conventional means. Attempting to do so will only bring disaster. That is valuable intelligence, sir. Perhaps the most valuable intelligence we could have gathered. Crathnor considered this. You think she was telling the truth? About human? Response? Every word. I read the assessment files. The ones you ignored. Humanity does not fight wars like we do. They fight with absolute conviction, total commitment, suicidal determination. They lose battles but refuse to lose wars, and they never, ever forget an insult. I paused. Letting Captain Thorne go was not weakness. It was wisdom. The first wise decision I have made since we intercepted her ship. Perhaps. But it was the right one. We sat in silence for a moment, two officers contemplating how close we had come to triggering an interstellar conflict over pride and posturing. Finally, Crathnor stood. Vexthar, you are reassigned. Effective immediately. Intelligence Division. I want you analyzing human behavior, human tactics, human psychology, everything. If we ever encounter them again, I want to be prepared. Yes, sir. And Vexthar? Read me the summary of those assessment files. The short version. What do humans want? I thought about Mira's words, her actions, her absolute refusal to submit even when submission would have been easier, to be left alone. Mostly, to explore, to laugh at inappropriate times, to prove everyone wrong, and to make absolutely certain that nobody, anywhere, ever makes them kneel. Krath nor nodded slowly. Then, we will leave them alone. 3 hours later, I watched from the observation deck as Mira's scout ship detached from our docking bay. It looked even more beat up in direct light, patched and scarred, and completely inadequate for deep space exploration. But it flew straight and true, heading back toward human territory with casual confidence. Just before she jumped to faster-than-light speeds, a message came through on the general channel. Audio only. Thanks for the hospitality, Kryn Dominion. The accommodations were terrible, the food was worse, and the company was questionable. But you learn fast, and that counts for something. Maybe we will meet again someday, under better circumstances, preferably with better snacks. Until then, remember what I told you. Humans do not kneel. We adapt. We overcome. We survive. And sometimes, when the situation calls for it, we bury those who forget that lesson. Safe travels. Captain Thorne out. The signal cut off. The scout ship vanished in a flash of distorted space. Krathnor stood beside me, watching the empty starfield. She would have made an excellent Kryn warrior. No, sir, she would not have. Because Kryn warriors follow orders, respect hierarchy, accept dominant structures. Captain Thorne would have overthrown you within a month and reorganized the entire military command on principles of maximum chaos and inappropriate humor. Krathnor actually smiled. A real smile, not the threatening display he usually employed. You are probably right. I am definitely right. We stood there together, two warriors who had just learned that the universe was larger, stranger, and more complicated than we ever imagined. And somewhere in the depths of human space, Captain Mira Thorne was probably already looking for her next adventure, her next impossible situation, her next opportunity to prove that humans were the universe's most magnificent disaster. I hoped our paths would not cross again, but I suspected they would, because humans and Kryn both shared one fundamental trait. We were both too stubborn to leave well enough alone. The difference was, humans made it entertaining, and in the cold vastness of space, between species and civilizations and cosmic forces beyond comprehension, that might be the most human thing of all. To face impossible odds, overwhelming force, certain death, and respond with laughter, defiance, and an absolute refusal to back down. The alpha beast had roared his command to kneel. The human had laughed and promised to bury him. And in the end, somehow, impossibly, everyone walked away alive. That was humanity in a nutshell. Terrifying, ridiculous, and absolutely unforgettable. I returned to my quarters and began writing my report. Title: Human Threat Assessment Update. Revised Recommendations for Kryn Dominion Interactions with Human Space. Recommendation 1. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Recommendation 2. If engagement becomes necessary, remember that humans respond better to respect than threats. Recommendation 3. Never, under any circumstances, try to make them kneel. Recommendation 4. Stock better snacks. I submitted the report to command and waited for the inevitable storm of questions. But the questions never came. Instead, 3 days later, Crathnor issued fleet-wide orders, establishing new protocols for encounters with human vessels. The orders emphasized diplomatic solutions, minimal aggression, and what he called productive coexistence. The Council never asked for details about the human scout incident. We never volunteered them. And somewhere in the administrative records, buried under mountains of bureaucracy and official reports, there existed one small notation in my personnel file. Vex Thar, Intelligence Officer. Commendation for exceptional judgment in first contact scenarios. Recommended for advancement. I never told anyone the real story. The full story. The true story of how one human woman had hijacked our flagship, outsmarted our Supreme War Alpha, and walked away free after teaching us all a lesson we desperately needed to learn. But I remembered every single detail. Because Captain Mira Thorne had been right about everything. Power was not about dominance. It was about understanding. Strength was not about forcing others to submit. It was about knowing when to stand firm and when to step back. And survival, in the vast and dangerous universe, was not about being the strongest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced. It was about being adaptable enough to learn from your enemies, wise enough to recognize when you were wrong, and brave enough to change course before pride destroyed everything you had built. Humans understood that instinctively. The Kryn Dominion was just beginning to learn. And in the space between stars, in the quiet moments between conflicts, I sometimes wondered if Captain Thorne ever thought about us, about the flagship she had conquered without firing a single shot, about the Alpha she had defeated without drawing blood. I hoped she did. I hoped she remembered us as the ones who learned, who listened, who chose wisdom over ego. Because in a universe full of species fighting for dominance, that made us unique. Almost as unique as the human who taught us the lesson. The Alpha Beast had roared. She had laughed. And the universe, vast and infinite and utterly indifferent to our small dramas, kept spinning, as it always had, as it always would.